He has a lot of wisdom. I respect him. And I willingly submit to him, not only because God placed him in that position, but also because he has a respect for me. It's not a matter of somebody using and abusing somebody. That's not submission. That's ungodly control. I have chosen to submit to Rick, and he has, on his end, he is supporting me. He's teaching me. He's mentoring me. It's a mutual respect. But I have willingly said, I will submit to you being in charge, because that is the best thing for the kingdom. It's not the best thing for Jeff. May or may not be the best thing for Rick. I don't know. A perfect example, David is here on the front row. He's my ministry partner. I've known him for years and years. We're in an interesting situation. I am submitted to him in our ministry as my spiritual leader, but at the same time, he is submitted to me because I am the legal president of the ministry. So we're submitted to each other in different ways. But we have agreed to come together because we believe it's the way that we can have the maximum effect for the kingdom. And that's why submission is so important, because we can do things together that we cannot do alone. Now, the problem we have in the United States is everybody wants to be independent. Nobody wants to be submitted or answerable or accountable. There are way too many Lone Rangers in the body of Christ. Way too many. Who are bound and determined that they can do it by themselves. They don't need anybody else. They don't want to be answerable to anybody else. I'm only answerable to God. We're going to deal with that in a little bit, because you're not only answerable to God. You may think you are. We are all answerable to God. But the Bible tells us a lot of other ways we have to be answerable to, not just to God. But God created all people in his image, and we all have equal value. But submission is mutual commitment and cooperation. I have submitted to Rick. I've submitted to David. The people in my life that I have submitted to, I believe, are arrangements that will allow me to use my gifts in the best possible way to affect the kingdom. And I'll tell you, if you have anything but a kingdom view, you need to go back and talk to God, because that's his view. It's not Jeff's view. It's not Pastor Rick's view. It's not Pastor Don's or Prophet Mike's view. That's God's view. God has a kingdom view. He does not want anyone to perish. And if we're involved in activities that show the world that we're no different than they are, why would they want anything to do with us? They wouldn't. We have got to, God has called us to be an excellent people. And too often in the church we're not. We're too busy arguing over petty things. We're too busy arguing about power or authority or who's going to do this or who's going to do that. You know, let's get out and get down to the business of saving people's lives, their eternal lives. And to do that, we have to submit. If we spend all our time fighting amongst ourselves, we will not accomplish what God's called us to do as a body. We have got to support the leadership of this church. You may not always agree with them. You know, I may not always agree. That may come as a shock to you, Rick, but so far I have. But, you know, there'll come a time. But there's a way to deal with that. If you don't agree with leadership, there's a way to deal with that. And the way is not rebellion. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a little bit. But we need to value each other as equals. And he didn't make man superior to woman, or vice versa. But he did come up with a way for us to work together, for men and women to work together, for pastors and teachers to work together, evangelists and prophets. He came up with a way for us all to work together. And that is to submit in mutual commitment, cooperation. Now, you all said you wanted to be like Jesus. Jesus, co-equal with God, submitted to his Father's will. Jesus submitted to the Father, his equal. You said you wanted to be like Jesus. Submit to those that God has placed in authority over you in your life. It's as simple as that, folks. Jesus gave us the model. If he's our model, he calls us to submission. And in a similar manner, even though woman is equal to man in God's eyes, but the way God has designed it is that the wife should submit to the husband for the sake of the marriage. And submission between equals is by choice, not by force. It's not something we have to be forced to do. It's something we choose to do. It's a choice we have. And we serve God in our relationships. We serve God by how we relate with each other. That's part of our service to God, is how we interact with each other. How we react to our spouses, how we react to our church leadership, how we react to our government leaders. And I'll tell you what, anybody here badmouth the leadership of our country lately? I'm guilty. Stop. Stop. Pray for them instead. And if you hear me say anything, tell me shut up. Please. Because it's not biblical. But all of us get off on these little sidetracks where we shouldn't be. And you know what? We need to keep ourselves accountable to each other. If we get off somewhere we're not supposed to be, that's really kind of the same as gossip. We don't have to agree with our leaders, but we're called to pray for them. We're called to support them. And you can vote for somebody else next time if you don't like who you got now. If we choose to submit in a biblical manner, we are choosing to obey and glorify God. God has called for submission, and when we obey God, he is glorified. Amen. When we do things God's way, we bring glory to him through our lives and our actions. He created the lines of authority so that this world could function smoothly, so that everything would work the way he envisioned it. Not the way we envision it. Because I'll tell you what, if you look at how we've envisioned it, how we've done it, we're sorely lacking. The results are not good. The results are not good. Now here's an important concept. In our relationships, there must be lines of authority, but there should not be lines of superiority. There have to be lines of authority, but too often we are trying to get superiority instead of exercising or acting within our God-given authority. That's the flesh way. You've got the spirit man. You've got the spirit part of you that always wants to do it God's way. You've got the flesh part of you that always wants to do it the easy, feel-good way. And Joyce Meyer says, the battlefield of the mind. Your mind is what makes the decision. You have to choose. Are we going to go God's way? Or are we going to go the fun way? Not that God's way can't be fun. Ultimately, it is. But when I say fun, it's the easy way. It's the flesh-satisfying way. It's a whole lot more fun to put somebody down and cuss them and trash them than it is to try and work it God's way, to try and talk to people, deal with them as equals, because we are all equal. But God has delegated these lines of authority. God created men and women with a unique and complementary set of characteristics.